on satellite, on Freeview, on cable, on radio, on mobile, on the web and around the world. This is First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7.
Making headlines first at 9. Incarceration awaits. Secretary to the former President Lalit Weeratunga and former Director of the Telecommunication Regulatory Commission Anusha Palpita sentenced to prison by the High Court. Had enough. President's Counsel Nihal Fernando tells the Commission of Inquiry that he will cease to represent Perpetual Treasuries Limited. Way paved. Inland Revenue Bill passed in Parliament. And in news across the world, wreaking havoc, Hurricane Irma devastates islands in the Caribbean. And in sports, rumours addressed, Sri Lanka cricket denies its president's involvement in the gaming industry. Bring you news from home and across the world. This is First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7. Good evening, I'm Katharina Chang. Now starting off with our top story tonight, Secretary to the former President Lalit Weeratunga and former Director of the Telecommunication Regulatory Commission Anusha Palpita were found guilty by the Colombo High Court today. They were charged with misappropriation of 600 million rupees of TRC funds to distribute silk cloths during the 2015 presidential election campaign. The duo were found guilty for 2 offences each by Colombo High Court Judge Gihan Kulatunga, with each offence amounting to a 1.5-year prison term.
The Financial Crimes Investigation Division launched an investigation into the Secretary to the former President, Lalit Weeratunga, and former Director of the Telecommunication Regulatory Commission, Anusha Palpita, for obtaining 600 million rupees of TRC funds and misappropriating them to distribute 700,000 silk cloths to temples across Sri Lanka during the last presidential election. Accordingly, indictments were filed against them in the Colombo High Court. Prior to announcing the verdict, High Court Judge Gihan Kulatunga said that the court took into consideration the fact that the funds were not used for the defendant's personal use. However, he added that it was public funds that were misused. The judge also revealed that the 600 million rupees in question were deposited to the former president's secretary's bank account without obtaining proper approval from the TRC's board of directors. The High Court judge said that evidence revealed that the relevant sum was spent on a presidential candidate. Furthermore, the judge added that evidence also showed they were directly appointed by the former president, and the motive for their action was to obtain further political favour to their respective authorities during the last presidential election. Accordingly, the judge said that charges against the defendants have been proven by the prosecution beyond reasonable doubt, and they are sentenced to 3 years of rigorous imprisonment. They were fined 1 million rupees each for each offence and ordered to pay 50 million rupees each to the Telecommunications Regulatory Commission as compensation. High Court Judge Gihan Kulatunga said that if they fail to pay the due fine before the 20th of this month, they will be sentenced to an additional 2 years in prison. Lalit Weeratunga and Anusha Palpita were escorted to prison this evening.
Meanwhile, former President Mahinda Rajapakse alleges that the sentencing of Lalit Weeratunga and Anusha Palpita are an attack on those who support Buddhist affairs. The former president made the remarks speaking to media following an event in Kegal.
He didn't keep the silk clothes at his home. Lalit Weeratunga and Anusha Palpita were given prison terms and fines for aiding Buddhist affairs. We will take steps to appeal against the ruling.
Meanwhile, a number of other politicians and civil organization representatives also voiced their views on the matter.
The project to distribute silk clothes using the Presidential Secretariat's funds was approved long before the presidential election. As the President's funds was insufficient, a loan was obtained from the Telecommunications Regulatory Commission, which was then well financed. I don't see anything wrong in that. Looking at the fate of Lalit Weerathunga, a prominent state official, other state officers are in fear. From today, it will be infinitely more difficult even to get them to sign a document. I believe in addition to the penalties, the money should be taken back. No one enjoys someone being thrown in jail, but the money should be recovered. By now, the current government has borrowed 5 billion rupees from the Telecommunications Regulatory Commission to build houses. Back then, as a state policy, we provided poor people of the country with silk clothes. This government is going beyond that, asking for 5 billion rupees. The law is implemented in a duplicit manner.
President's Counsel Nihal Fernando today told the Presidential Commission of Inquiry to probe controversial bond issuance that he will cease to represent Perpetual Treasuries Limited after its Chief Executive Officer Counsel Palisena finishes providing testimony. Meanwhile, Criminal Investigations Department officials attached to the commission questioned the former PTL director Arjun Aloysius until 6 p.m. today.
The Presidential Commission of Inquiry issued notice to former Director of Perpetual Treasuries Limited, Arjun Aloysius, to appear before the Commission, and he arrived at COI premises at around 8:30 this morning and gave a statement to CID officials attached to the Commission. Meanwhile, President's Counsel representing Perpetual Treasuries Limited, Nihal Fernando, making a special statement to the Commission, said he informed the company that he is unable to represent them anymore. He said he would represent PTL until the end of the cross-examination of the CEO of the company, Counsel Palisena, since the evidence he brought before the Commission is highly technical and it is his responsibility to safeguard professional integrity. Fernando went on to say that he was unaware of efforts of the officials of the company to tamper with evidence, referring to the deletion of certain telephone conversations from the company's phone recording system. In the meantime, the Commission today ordered the Division for Assisting and Protecting Victims of Crime and Witnesses of Sri Lanka Police to be vigilant over the safety of witnesses who provided evidence that PTL tampered with evidence.
The third reading of the Inland Revenue Bill was passed with amendments in Parliament today. 90 parliamentarians voted in favour of the amended bill, while 25 voted against and none abstained. Meanwhile, a number of views were aired during the debate on the second reading of the bill, which took place early in the day.
We hope to provide everyone in this country with a universal tax file number, especially those over 18. It doesn't mean that they must pay taxes. The possession of such a number will ease opening of bank accounts and will grant them free entry to places such as the National Museum and Sigiriya. Some call this a plan by the IMF. No, this is a Sri Lankan plan. Instead of the 28% income tax common for business institutions, it has been proposed to halve that rate to 14%. This bill, including the pay-as-you-earn tax, will be implemented from the 31st of October. It will fully come into action from the 1st of April 2018.
There are over 1 million families earning less than 320 rupees per day. It's wrong if you think they should be labelled as people who hold tax file numbers. This bill imposes a tax even on dowry and assets inherited upon a relative's death.
Inherited assets are exempted from the tax.
When we call out the issue, you remember it and say there is an amendment. We don't need to remind you to exempt the president's salary. It's the first exemption on the list.
For the first time in history, relief aid has been taxed. Relief aid is given by the government. There is no mention here that relief aid is exempted.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe insists that the contract secured by the Colombo Dockyard PLC to build a ship for a Japanese company depicts investor confidence in Sri Lanka. The Prime Minister made these remarks addressing the keel laying ceremony at the Colombo Dockyard this morning.
Colombo Dockyard plc received its first ever contract from a Japanese company, Kokusai Cable Ship Company Limited, to manufacture its first ever cable-laying vessel and contract-wise its biggest ever vessel. The cost of the project is $53 million. The ship, the longest ever manufactured in Sri Lanka, spans 111.3 meters in length and is 21.5 meters in width. The vessel, 8.8 meters in depth, boasts cable and rope tank capacity of 5,000 tons and provides sleeping accommodation for a total of 80 people including crew and guests. The ship will comply with latest IMO regulations and is scheduled for delivery on the 29th of March 2019. The keel-laying ceremony of the ship was held with the participation of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and Minister of Development Strategies and International Trade Malik Samaravikrama.
We will be having another dockyard also in Sri Lanka, and I hope we can find space for Colombo Dockyards to expand, because ship repair is becoming important, though shipbuilding as an industry at the moment has been affected by a slump. But this shows the fact that there is confidence in Sri Lanka, that foreign investors, foreign companies now have confidence in Sri Lanka. And Colombo Dockyard has been responsible for part of it. What we have done is now a part of taking the country on a higher growth rate. I would also like to see more and more ships that are being constructed here. Your Excellency, I appreciate the help that the government of Japan has given us and the agreements which we have reached recently to Japan, where I met Prime Minister Abe. We show more and more involvement of Japan in Sri Lanka.
In the meantime, later in the evening at the Police Day celebrations, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has said the serious crime rates in the country has gone down by 30%. The Premier attributed the decrease in serious crimes to the government's move to empower the police. The 151st Police Day celebration was held in Colombo Police Grounds today under the patronage of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. Minister of Law and Order and Southern Development, Sagla Ratnayaka, and Inspector General of Police, Pujit Jasundara, also graced the event.
From the sky, from 6,000 feet high, the first officer lands.
Law enforcement in Sri Lanka should be on par with that of the United Kingdom, Germany and Japan. We had that prestige some time ago. To regain that status, we should pay attention to two aspects. One is narcotics spread across the country. We have to combat narcotics after combating terrorism. The other thing is to sabotage organized crime. I would like to request the IGP and others in police service to work towards this objective.
Welcome back to the news. The inclement weather has prompted the Disaster Management Centre to issue landslide warnings to 5 districts identified as landslide-prone areas across the country. Meanwhile, Provincial Secretary of Education to the Sabaragama province, Mahinda S. Veerasurya, said that schools in Ratnapura, Ayagama, Kuruvita, Alapatha and Ahaliyagoda will be closed tomorrow due to the prevalent weather situation.
Derana received reports of flooding in several locations in the western, southern, Sabaragama and central regions of the island today. Over the course of the last 24 hours, the highest rainfall was recorded in Kirindiwala, Gampaha at 194 millimeters. Low-lying land in Kaluwaggala and Hangwala are also underwater due to the rising levels of the Kalani River. Meanwhile, the Ratnapura district received rainfall of 135.6 millimeters. As a result, vehicular movement in Ahaliyagoda, Idamgoda Main Road and Ellavala areas came to a standstill owing to floods reported in the area. Spill gates of Kukuleganga were opened today, releasing 140 cubic meters of water per second. Residents of low-lying areas of Ingiriya, Bulat Sinhala, Agalavatta and Maduravala were warned to evacuate immediately by the Disaster Management Centre owing to the volume of water released. Meanwhile, the Naragala area in Horana was inundated with the opening of a spill gate of the Kukuleganga reservoir. A Buddhist monastery in Millenia was affected by floods owing to heavy rains. Our correspondent reports that several parts of the Bulat Sinhala Molkava main road are inundated. As a result, the Navy deployed boats in the area. Meanwhile, strong winds uprooted a tree in Rajagiriya, damaging a house. Hatton police cautioned drivers to remain vigilant when travelling along the Hatton-Colombo and Hatton-Nuwara main roads owing to heavy mist. Meanwhile, Minister of Disaster Management Rupee said that measures have been taken to deploy several armoured vehicles and boats, courtesy of the Army and Navy, should a flood situation occur.
Steps have been taken to convene officers of the Departments of Irrigation and Meteorology, as well as National Building Research Organisation and the Disaster Management Centre, to coordinate relief efforts together with the Army and Navy. Relief stores belonging to National Disaster Management Centres are open for 24 hours, and we are fully geared to respond to disasters. We have also coordinated with the Ministry of Health to ensure that hospitals are prepared, taking into consideration the situation, and the 1990 ambulance service is also available. We can regard this as a minor flood situation which has not yet reached dangerous levels.
State Minister of Defence Ruwan Wijewardene says Sri Lanka stands firmly with Pakistan with regard to the elimination of terrorism. The State Minister expressed these views addressing the 52nd Pakistan Defence Day celebrations in Colombo last night. The 52nd Pakistan Defence Day celebrations were held under the patronage of State Minister of Defence Ruwan Wijewardene. Foreign ambassadors, Pakistani defence advisors employed in Sri Lanka, Army Commander Lieutenant General Mahesh Senanayake and Navy Chief Vice Admiral Travis Sinnaya were among the invitees at the event.
Throughout history, our two nations have stood by each other in difficult times, resulting in the creation of a relationship based on the pillars of respect, trust and friendship. An interesting aspect of the defense cooperation between Sri Lanka and Pakistan is that it is solely driven by mutual trust and friendship. Therefore, the defense ties that exist between Sri Lanka and Pakistan carry a unique value in the overall bilateral relationship between the two countries. Sri Lanka deeply appreciates the steadfast support extended by Pakistan in defeating terrorism in our country. At this point of time, Sri Lanka is standing firm with Pakistan and wish that any remnants of terrorism faced by them are eliminated as soon as
Meanwhile,
possible.
Acting High Commissioner of Pakistan to Sri Lanka, Dr. Sarfraz Ahmad Khan, Sipra, read out a statement sent by President of Pakistan, Mamnoon Hussain, on the country's security.
Government of Pakistan, in unanimity with all the stakeholders and with complete backing from the entire political spectrum and the people, has launched a national action plan under which armed forces, personnel of police and law enforcement agencies are successfully rooting out the menace of terrorism and extremism from the country.
The Secretary of the Police Commission today confirmed that SSP Shani Abesekara is appointed as the Director of the CID with immediate effect. Now let's take a look at other stories making news across Sri Lanka.
The draft bill of the 20th Amendment to the Constitution was rejected by the Northern Provincial Council today during its 105th session. Chief Minister C.V. Wigneshwaran said the forwarded draft bill is unclear and therefore a solid opinion could only be expressed if the draft bill undergoes further amendments. Two persons who were attempting to assist a woman who was run over by a motorcycle were in turn knocked down by a speeding jeep in Bulugala along the Dambulla-Anuradhapura road. The woman, who sustained injuries from the collision with the motorcycle, died on the spot following the second collision, while the other two were admitted to the Dambulla hospital. Meanwhile, CCTV captured footage of a speeding three-wheeler knocking down two devotees who were returning home after observing Sil on the Poya day. The incident occurred along the main road of the Polonnaruwa New Town. A Chinese national was arrested in possession of illegally imported cigarettes. The arrest was made adjacent to Gaul Road in Colombo, with the suspect in possession of approximately 1,200 cigarettes. He was ordered to appear before the Fort Magistrates Court and was released on police bail.
Hurricane Irma ravaged its way across the Caribbean, reducing buildings to rubble in several islands and leaving at least 10 people dead. Irma remains a Category 5 storm and is the most powerful Atlantic storm in a decade, sustaining wind speeds of 285 kilometers per hour as it heads towards Turks and Caicos from northeast of the Dominican Republic.
Hurricane Irma first struck the dual island nation of Antigua and Barbuda, and Premier Gaston Brown said about 95% of buildings on the island of Barbuda had suffered damage. He was quoted as saying that the island is barely habitable after the hurricane hit, telling international media that 50% of the population were now homeless and it would cost $100 million to rebuild the island. Saint Martin, comprising the French territory of Saint-Martin and the Dutch section Sint-Maarten, suffered catastrophic damage with 8 deaths reported so far, and officials saying that 95% of the island is destroyed, including St. Martin's airport, the third largest in the Caribbean.
A court in the Indian city of Mumbai today sentenced 2 men to death for their role in bomb attacks in 1993 that killed 257 people. The blast targeted dozens sites and were allegedly motivated by the demolition of a mosque in North India by Hindu hardliners the year before.
The court said the 6 men, one of whom died in prison before sentencing, had transported weapons and planted bombs which targeted landmark buildings in Mumbai's financial hub. Firoz Abdul Rashid Khan and Tahir Merchant were sentenced to death, while Karimullah Ozan Khan and Abu Salem were given life sentences, and Riaz Siddiqui was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Investigators said the bombs were ordered by India's most wanted man, gangster Dawood Ibrahim, to avenge the demolition of a historic Babri mosque in North India by Hindu hardliners in 1992, during a period of religious conflict. Several people suspected to have been involved in the bombings have yet to be arrested, including Ibrahim, who is believed to be hiding in Pakistan, a claim that Pakistan denies.
In a recent report, the Oxford Business Group said that increased access for air travellers, strong advertising campaigns and enhanced bilateral cooperation are underpinning Sri Lanka's push to expand its foothold in India, one of the world's largest potential tourism source markets. Both private sector players and public officials in Sri Lanka see the country's northern neighbour as a key source of growth in the coming years, central to increasing foreign arrivals beyond 3 million a year by 2020. On trends, the report also said that Sri Lanka may struggle to achieve the Sri Lanka's Tourism Development Authority's goal of 2.5 million overseas tourists in 2017, though recent results put the industry well on its way to surpassing last year's 1.8 million. On your stock update, the Sri Lankan shares today edged up from their lowest close in more than 4 months hit in the previous session as foreign investors bought battered shares. The Colombo stock index ended 0.02% higher at 6,382, recovering from its lowest close since the 17th of April hit yesterday. For a complete report, let's cross over to Imeshi Fernando from the Colombo Stock Exchange.
Top 5 gainers of the day were Adam Investments, Singaputra Finance Preference Shares, Singaputra Finance, Lucky Lanka Non-Voting and Ceylon Printers, while the top 5 losers were Bearwell Resorts, Lanka Aluminium, Radiant Gems International, Central Investments and Finance and Royal Palms Beach Hotels. Today's foreign purchases were 481.41 million rupees and foreign sales were 149.29 million rupees.
The Sri Lankan rupee ended marginally weaker in thin trade today as imported dollar demand outpaced selling of the US currency by exporters and banks. The spot rupee ended at 152.70 cents to 80 per dollar compared with yesterday's close of 152.55 cents to 65 cents. Here's a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other currencies during the day. Sri Lanka Cricket issued a special statement yesterday refuting news reports and rumours claiming that its president, Thilanga Sumitipal, is involved in the gaming industry. The statement, which is signed by SLC's CEO Ashley De Silva, refers both generally to the allegations, quote, being instigated by interested parties, unquote, on social media, and specifically to those in certain news publications.
Sri Lanka Cricket says extracts of court proceedings were quoted out of context and have been done, quote, maliciously while deliberately and unjustly suppressing the subsequent series of questions, unquote, wherein Thilanga Sumitipala clarifies that his admission is to the existence of a public perception that he and his family are involved in the gaming industry and not that he is directly or indirectly involved therein. SLC also pointed out that its anti-corruption unit, which operates under the ICC, confirmed that the allegations being levelled at Sumitipala with regard to connections with the gaming industry have no substance. The SLC also appealed to the general public to ascertain the truth and weigh facts for themselves and not be misled by, quote, erroneous and malicious rumours, unquote, that are being circulated by parties with personal agendas.
Sri Lanka were beaten in the one-off T20 that capped a Tour 1 precedented success for visitors India, who won all of the 3 tests and 5 ODIs in addition to last night's game, marking their first ever overseas tour with a perfect record. With last night's result handing the visitors a 9-0 whitewash across all 3 formats, the interim coach of the Sri Lankan cricket team, Nick Pothas, said after the game that the Sri Lankan team is still in development and likened the Indian side to rugby heavyweights New Zealand.
They're very all-black-like. They're ruthless in the way they go about their work, and they don't shirk work. Their work ethic is immense. They are what a lot of teams aspire to be.
The interim coach of the Sri Lankan side continued to suggest that Sri Lanka were always going to struggle against such a complete opponent.
We're a side that's developing. They're a side that are complete. So it's always going to be tough to compete against them or to try and beat them. But we just needed to maybe compete a little bit more.
Let us now cross over to Dhammika Ekanayake at the Derana Weather Centre with the latest weather update.
Good evening and welcome to the Weather Centre. Now, if you take a look at the South Asian region, we can expect a formation of a low pressure zone persisting over the next 24 hours, particularly in the Bay of Bengal. Despite average temperatures, we can expect more heavy rainfall in most parts of the island, especially in the southwest and eastern regions. This could result in thunder showers in cities like Trincomalee, Anuradhapura, as well as Colombo, Galle, Mathura and Kandy. Now, let's take a look at the city-by-city forecast.
And before we go, we'd like to take you to Denmark, which hosted a spectacular water show recently. The performance featured around 600 performers and acrobats and used water, light and sound, as well as physical features of the harbour itself to create a haunting display. Thank you for joining us. Have a pleasant evening.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.